Hello, Rising Phoenix family. Trevor here, Master Olds, with another Conversations from the Hearth. We wanted to talk with you guys today about the Home Dojang. Can you speak a little to that, sir?
Yes. So I think the Home Dojang is something that seems a little strange to us in this day and age, because we usually train at big, gyms with lots of other people and group lessons. But really, martial arts, as we know it today, started in the Home Dojang. And I think right now, because of COVID-19 and the situations that surround it, we don't really have much chance to train together. And so this is the perfect opportunity for us to really double down on that Home Dojang. Now, for some of you, you won't be able to, you might not be in a situation to really do that. You might not have the financial resources or the space in your house or whatever. But if you do, this is really for you. I want to start talking about Taekwondo, the history of Taekwondo, as kind of a starting place to kind of explain what a Home Dojang is and how it can be a really special place and a different place from like our school dojang. The school dojang, it's a little bit of everyone. It's my heart, it's Trevor's heart, it's your heart, and all of our hearts mixed together, our combined dreams and all that kind of stuff. But your Home Dojang is like your little quiet place. It's a mixture of, maybe your garden and your study. It's a place where you go to find peace, but also a place where you go to get some serious work done. And that's very unique. That's different from the kind of loud and rambunctious place that the school tends to be. But let me start with the history of Taekwondo. So as you guys know, Taekwondo does go back thousands of years in Korea. It's kind of got a multifaceted history, and I don't want to talk too much about the sort of thousands of year old Taekwondo history. I want to talk more about the sort of more modern Korean, Japanese lineage. So basically, after World War II, when Koreans were able to start practicing their traditional martial arts, they most of them were trained in Japanese martial arts, like karate, and they basically decided to create their own martial art called Taekwondo, but it was started with a lot of the karate techniques.
The kind of fundamentals.
Yeah, and the first master of our lineage was trained by Gichin Funakoshi, who is the founder of Shotokan Karate. So if you look up on our wall in the gym, we have 4 pictures that are like kind of, and then there's a space and there's 4 more pictures. The first 4 pictures, starting with Grandmaster Kwan, are all Korean masters. That's our Korean lineage. But once you make that jump into the other 4, that's the Japanese lineage. Those are the Japanese masters that taught the Korean masters. And once it came into the Korean masters, that's when it became Taekwondo. And here at Taekwondo, here at Rising Phoenix Martial Arts, we try not to be overly dogmatic. And with that, because we just put out that video on dogma, for me, it doesn't matter nationality. It doesn't matter if it's a Japanese thing or a Korean thing or a Chinese thing or an American thing. I think the language of the warrior is universal. And there may be some things that Korean culture has or Japanese culture has that we don't have. And we can kind of bring that all together into the most beautiful harmony that we can find. And I think when we find it, it doesn't matter what culture you come from, we will all agree that that is what the warrior ethos is. So anyway, Taekwondo really comes from karate, or karate, as they say in Japanese, and it comes from a place called Okinawa. And the history you have to know a little bit about the history of karate. So, Okinawa was occupied by Japan, much like Korea was occupied by Japan. And they were prohibited from using any of their martial weapons, like swords and spears and things like that. And so they had to learn to fight with farm implements. That's why when you think of karate...
There's a lot of cultures that have had to do these over the years, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Training in secret, kind of disguising their
like
training.
Capoeira, where, that a lot of dance fighting was to disguise the fact that they were actually training in martial arts, or... You know, screamadors and stuff. You might arguably be able to say that, you know, fighting with sticks as opposed to, you know, real weapons.
I always love the story of, like, you know, the occupying forces come in and say, "What are you doing?" And they say, "Oh, this is just our fun stick dance that we do, you know, this is our ceremonial stick dance." And
Well,
then it's just a short jump from sticks to machetes, or, you know, eskrima.
Well, that's where unarmed combat really had to start, because no one would choose to fight with their hands as opposed to a weapon if they could choose to do so. Although nowadays, you know, because we don't really have weapons, sometimes
You don't carry around a
now that I
sword
live in
in
Texas,
your
you know,
backpack.
I mean, it might be a different case, but you know, a lot of times getting to a weapon is more difficult in the modern age. We don't usually carry them loaded on our hip all the time, so you know, knowing unarmed combat is definitely useful. But anyway, I'm getting way off track, guys. So I want to go back to Okinawa and to karate, and a time where they were under occupation and they couldn't train with any martial weapons. They had to learn to fight with their bare hands, and they learned a form of kung fu. And in the early days, karate literally meant Chinese hand. Now, when Gichin Funakoshi kind of brought it to mainland Japan and formed Shotokan Karate, he named it Empty Hand. He changed the one character that stood for Chinese hand into another character that sounded the same but had a different meaning, and it became Empty Hand. And anyway, back when it was in Okinawa, and they were under this occupation, they weren't able to train in public. They had to train in private. With their master in a probably in a home dojang, or dojo as you say in Japanese, and it became a sort of a monastic practice because of that sort of solitary practice. Like, unlike a lot of other martial arts, which kind of came out of, you know, pride fighting and, you know, like, you know, gladiatorial sort of bouts and stuff. Karate came out of like trying to learn to empower yourself, to resist against others, to find peace and harmony inside of yourself. And
you kind of likened it to bonsai.
Yeah, so it's like, you know,
just
imagine training your kata on your own in your home dojang, and thinking of it more of like Zen archery and the peacefulness of mind you might get from that, or tending your garden and pruning your bonsai, that sort of thing. That's really the culture in which karate came out of, and is still practiced like that in Okinawa, Japan. And you know, we are so lucky that karate was the first martial art to really make a dent over here in the West, because it paved the way for all these other martial arts that if they had come over, we probably would think of martial arts like we think of boxing or high school wrestling. We wouldn't think of it as this thing that has so much depth and so spirituality and a whole way of life that teaches leadership life skills and a warrior ethos and all this kind of stuff. That really came from karate, and that sort of bonsai, self-study, inner reflection, that came out of that home dojang. And that's why we really wanted to talk about that today, because it's a special thing that, you know, even if you guys, we want you all to come back and train with us when we reopen, so we don't want you to get too attached to your home dojang. But even when you come back, having that home, you know, that little home shrine, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, martial arts aren't something that you only do when you're here. It's
also a very personal activity. So, you know, what does a home dojang look like? Most home dojangs usually, you know, are a reflection of the person that uses them. They have, you know, a shrine, usually at the head of the dojang, that usually has a picture of their master, as well as like candles and incense and reminders of things that they need to do to be successful. You know, like you know, I have certain sayings up on my bathroom mirror to remind me to you know, never give up and all this kind of stuff. And those kind of sayings, mementos, would probably be on the shrine in your home dojang. And we're going to be going into a lot of cool things that you're going to be able to add to your Home Dojang that you can make by hand, that will make this place feel so cool. So stay tuned to our YouTube channel because we got a lot of videos on that. I don't want to go too far into that right now, but that's just something to keep in mind. Things like wooden training dummies and stretching racks and really cool weights. In Okinawa and in traditional karate, we train with like jars and stuff, or a wooden stick with a cement block on top for strengthening your forearms. All these really cool home training devices that don't make any sense for us to really train with on the mats, but would just be so cool for inspiring you to train at home.
I was curious if you were going to go into. It's funny you were saying that the Home Dojang is an expression of the person, and I was curious if you were going to kind of describe our Dojang up in Vermont, because I think it is very expressive of who we are. It's in the woods, it's these macawaris on trees. Built. Yeah, it's built with very large, sturdy beams. I didn't know if you were going to talk about that, but that's just what I was thinking of when you're bringing that up.
Yeah. Well, the makawari is another thing that we want to talk about. It's the traditional striking board that's made out of rope and hay, and gives us really satisfying sort of snap to it. And that could be outside your dojang. You can also set them up inside your dojang. But anyway, that's all for another video. Mm-hmm. One of the things that a lot of people don't often realize is that master who teaches you karate in Okinawa a lot of times is your father or your mother, and they would take you out to the dojang very much like fathers take their sons out to the garage and teach them about cars or teach them how to mow the grass. And we feel that since we have a lot of parents training with their kids, that can be a very similar experience for you, especially in this time. And, if you're the first person in your family to ever really get into the martial arts, think about what a great opportunity this is to be the founder of your own warrior dynasty, lineage, heritage for your family that you can pass on generation after generation, and you can empower and teach your children's children how to defend themselves and keep spreading that on. So having that Home Dojang is the first start in that. Mm-hmm. Are there any other things that you want to talk about, Trevor, about the Home Dojang? I'm trying to...
there's a lot of things I was thinking of. You were describing the gripping jars and the kind of wrist strengthening exercises, and I don't know if people know about the camp that you run, that I run over the summers, but it just made me think of, basically, we have a Home Dojang up in Vermont where we go every summer that has, I've built an obstacle course up there. I have a lot of these kind of stations where you have rebar and you're going back and forth to strengthen. And when I bring people up to that camp to kind of train in this very monastic style, I get people are so, they love it. They find it really rewarding. It's this very deep, satisfying way of training.
I think a lot of you, when I say Home Dojang, and like when I put up the training accessories for your Home Dojang, I'm probably thinking, ooh, do I want to get all this stuff because in a couple months I'm probably going to be back training, and how much do I want to reorganize my house and all this kind of stuff, and do how much do I want to spend on this? And that's one way to think about it, but I think you're missing out on another opportunity, which is how exciting was it for you to put together the baby room for your first child? A pretty epic experience, very exciting, thinking about all the ways you can do this. Same thing when you first started your garden. Well, how am I going to put down the plants, and what is it going to look like? That's a really exciting experience, and that's how I think if you are going to kind of think about starting a Home Dojang, that's what's going to get you jazzed up. Okay, what do I like about martial arts? Okay, maybe I really like the forms. So my Dojang is going to have this really cool stretching rack that's going to allow me to really work on my splits. It's going to have a wooden horse, which is going to allow me to work on my kicking precision. That's going to be my Dojang. Maybe I'm really into meditation, which that is just something I want to talk about. You know, and so I'm going to have incense and candles and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, it can be different for everyone. You're really into grappling, you're going to have that grappling dummy there and some other, you know, like physio balls. You can work on your knee, knee on belly and moving around, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, but I want to get back to that meditation because I was going to mention that and I forgot to say that. Guys, you know, martial arts, I just want to say, you know, martial arts is not religious, right? But, you know, meditation is a really great place to start your training every day. All right, clearing your mind. You know, every time we bow when we enter the Dojang, we bow because we're clearing our mind of any aggression or anger, like, you know, things that are bothering us, so that when we go onto the mat, we don't hurt anyone else on the floor. Well, I think the same thing should be true for your home training experience. I want you to, if this is your thing, you know, maybe light up an incense, do a big bow to Grandmaster Kwan, and then clear your mind of all the things that are, you know, bothering you, and kind of get into the mode of training. You know, when I get up at 8 o'clock in the morning or even earlier than that, the last thing I want to do is go kick a really hard, heavy bag, you know? And a lot of times when I do start my training, I'll start out with that like really soft VersaFlex because I want to kind of get warmed up. Well, meditating is kind of like that. It's kind of like put yourself in the mind, kind of get in the gears moving, and then start stretching out and slowly start applying that pressure until finally you're all sweating, moving around. And then meditation is also a really great place to wrap it up at the end.
Yeah, and I'll just say, just on its own, just that kind of meditative mindfulness, starting out your day, it will do wonders. You know, how many people have I heard say, "Oh, I'm so full of anxiety and stress, and I want something that will kind of relax my mind." Just starting your day with meditation is incredible. I mean, at my camp, that's how I start every day. We run and then we meditate for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and people feel just in a week of doing that. And I don't want to be like, your life will change if you meditate, but I really encourage people to try it because just in the week that I do it with people that I bring up to the camp, they say, wow, I feel so much more present. I feel like I'm so much more able to interact with people in the way that I want to. I'm so much more mindful. I'm so much more present. And
especially if you do your training in the middle of the day, you know, meditation is super important because, you know, these days we interact with so many devices. We move at such a fast pace that we really need to spend a little bit of time sort of quieting our mind and not doing anything to get back to center so that we can really focus on something. So folks, that's all we have with the Home Dojang. We hope you are excited as us to start working on our Home Dojangs. And stay tuned. We got a lot of videos to kind of help you in that experience. But until we see you next time on the next Conversations from the Hearth, keep training hard.